My daughter uninvited me for her wedding when I insisted on attending with my wife. She said, "I don't like her and won't want to see her on my biggest day. You might as well not come if you want to come with her." I showed up and she asked security to throw me out. So I left, but what happened next was rather unexpected. I will tell you everything. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. Like this story and leave a comment on which city you are watching from. I used to think that time could heal anything, that if you showed up enough, called enough, paid enough tuition, and swallowed enough disrespect, the bond between a father and daughter would eventually straighten itself out. That's what I told myself after the divorce, when I found myself sleeping alone in a one-bedroom apartment while my ex-wife played house with a man who used to be our family friend. That's what I believed when I met Olivia, the woman who eventually became my second wife, the first person in years who made me feel like I wasn't just a paycheck or a punching bag. But no amount of patience could fix what was already broken. My daughter, Erin, never gave Olivia a chance. From the moment they met, she sized her up like a threat. At first, I blamed the timing. Maybe it was too soon after the divorce. Maybe Erin just needed space. But as the years passed, it became clear Erin didn't want me happy. She wanted me miserable, loyal to the version of me her mother had crafted after leaving. Lonely, guilty, and always waiting for crumbs of affection that never came. The wedding invitation came in a thick cream envelope with rose gold lettering. It was formal, classy, the kind of event you assume will be filled with soft music and matching napkins. I held it in my hands for a full minute before opening it, savoring the moment. I thought maybe this was a turning point. Maybe this was Erin saying, "I see you. I appreciate you." But then I read the fine print at the bottom of the RSVP card, tucked away like a side note. "Please do not bring guests not explicitly invited." And in bold, underlined font, "This includes Olivia." My hands went cold. I read it twice, 3 times, thinking maybe I was misunderstanding. This had to be a mistake. I texted Erin immediately. No anger, just confusion. "Is this real? You don't want me to come with my wife?" Her response came less than a minute later. No pleasantries, no softening the blow. Just, "I don't like her and won't want to see her on my biggest day. You might as well not come if you want to come with her." That was when something shifted in me, something subtle but seismic. It wasn't just about Olivia, though that was insulting enough. It was about the years I'd tried, the birthdays I never missed, the weekends I waited for her to show up and she never did, the checks I sent without a thank you. And now, at what should have been a shared milestone, she wanted to erase me from the frame because I refused to leave the woman who'd stood by me for 10 years. Still, even then, I didn't think she meant it. Not really. I thought it was an emotional flare-up, a petty demand that would dissolve under the weight of time. So I showed up. I showed up in my best suit, holding Olivia's hand, hoping against hope that Erin would look past her bitterness for one day, her day, and let me be there. For her. For us. The venue was a vineyard an hour outside the city, elegant, remote, the kind of place people rent when they want Instagram-worthy moments. There were fairy lights strung between oak trees and a red carpet leading toward the main hall. Guests were already arriving, some holding champagne flutes, some greeting each other with hugs and wide smiles. As I stepped out of the car with Olivia, I saw a few familiar faces, distant cousins, old friends from church. Some nodded in my direction. A few looked away. I assumed it was awkwardness. Divorces do that to people. But then 2 men in black suits walked toward me with stiff expressions, one holding a clipboard, the other wearing a headset. "Sir, we're going to have to ask you to leave," one of them said. Just like that. No warning. No explanation. I blinked. "I'm her father," I said, laughing nervously, thinking this was some kind of mix-up. "This is Olivia, my wife." The man didn't flinch. "You're not on the approved guest list. You've been asked not to attend." His tone was flat, professional. It wasn't personal to him, but it was deeply personal to me. I looked over his shoulder and saw my ex-wife standing near the reception tent, holding a wine glass and talking to someone I didn't recognize. Her husband, I assumed. When she turned and saw me being approached by security, she didn't look surprised. If anything, she looked smug, like a chess player watching the final piece fall into place. That's when I knew. This wasn't Erin acting out of the blue. This was orchestrated. Planned. Manipulated. My daughter had become her mother's daughter completely, and I had walked straight into their game like a fool. Olivia squeezed my hand, her eyes wide but calm. "Let's go," she whispered. She didn't protest, didn't cry, didn't ask me to fight. And that's why I love her. Because she knows when dignity matters more than defiance. We walked back to the car in silence, each step heavier than the last. As we drove away, I turned off my phone. I didn't want to see photos. I didn't want to read half-hearted apologies or gaslighting messages telling me I was overreacting. I didn't want to hear how it was her day and how I should have just come alone. I wasn't going to spend another second bending myself into pieces for people who saw me as disposable. That day, on the drive back home, I didn't just feel like I lost my daughter. I felt like I finally saw her for who she really was. And I wasn't sure I liked what I saw. When people talk about humiliation, they usually describe it as something loud, jeers in a crowd, someone pointing fingers, public laughter. But for me, it was quiet. Dead quiet. Just the soft gravel crunching beneath our feet as Olivia and I turned around and walked back toward the car. The words, "You've been asked not to attend," still ringing in my ears like the tail end of a funeral bell. I didn't even look back. I couldn't. I was afraid if I saw my daughter smiling somewhere in the distance, I'd lose whatever grip I had on myself. The anger, the shame, the betrayal, it all sat like a weight in my chest. I kept trying to replay what I could have done differently, but nothing made sense. I had loved her, raised her, paid for everything she ever needed. And yet there I was, being escorted out of my own child's wedding like a wedding crasher with bad intentions. We sat in the car for a long time before either of us spoke. Olivia placed her hand gently on my thigh, her touch light, almost hesitant. I couldn't meet her eyes. Not because I blamed her, never because of that, but because I hated that she had to witness it, that she had to see my daughter make me small, that she was the target of Aaron's bitterness and didn't deserve any of it. "I'm sorry," I whispered, barely able to push the words past my throat. "You don't owe me an apology," she said quietly. "I'm just sorry she did that to you." I finally looked at her and felt something break inside me. Not a loud, clean break, but a slow fracture, the kind that splits through your bones quietly and leaves you limping for the rest of your life. Erin had humiliated me, yes, but more than that, she had drawn a line in the sand and dared me to pick a side. And the most brutal part? She already knew which side I'd pick. She was just hoping I'd pick her anyway. I pulled out my phone, finally ready to see the fallout. No missed calls, no messages, just a notification from social media tagging me in a post. I clicked it out of habit, already bracing for whatever I'd see. There it was, Erin, in her wedding dress, beaming. My ex-wife stood beside her, dressed like the proud mother of the bride, her husband with one arm around Erin's shoulder and a champagne flute in his other hand. The caption read, "To the two people who've never let me down. Thank you for always showing up. I love you both." My eyes stung, but I didn't cry. I couldn't. It was beyond that now. I was numb. I stared at that photo like it was a crime scene, an image of what used to be my life, now completely rewritten. I wasn't just uninvited. I had been replaced, erased, airbrushed out of the frame like I never existed. That night, I didn't sleep. Olivia tried. God, she tried. She made tea, rubbed my shoulders, even curled up beside me just to be close. But I was somewhere else entirely. I was 10 years deep in memories, unraveling every single time I'd let things slide. Every time I'd said, "She's just going through a phase," or "She doesn't mean it." But she did mean it. Every eye roll, every refusal to acknowledge Olivia, every time she pretended not to hear me say, "I love you." It had all been intentional, calculated, and worst of all, encouraged. My ex-wife had fed that resentment like firewood, each log soaked in years of bitterness and blame. She'd won, in her own twisted way. She turned Erin into a weapon, and I was the target all along. The next morning, Olivia left early for work, kissing me softly on the cheek and whispering, "Take care of yourself today." I sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing, until my phone buzzed again. A message from my sister. "I'm so sorry, Mike. I didn't know she would go that far. Are you okay?" I didn't know how to answer that. Was I okay? I felt like I'd been punched in the gut and told to smile about it. I typed back, "Thanks. I'll be fine." But that was a lie. I wasn't fine. I was broken. And the worst part? I wasn't even surprised. A few days later, a friend of mine who had been invited to the wedding called. He hesitated at first, clearly unsure if he should say anything. But then he told me something that made my blood run cold. "Mike," he said, "they made a toast at the reception. Aaron called your ex's husband, the man who showed up when it mattered most." The whole place clapped. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just sat there, the words echoing in my head like a sentence in a courtroom. The man who showed up. I was the one who paid for her private school, her college tuition, her first car. I was the one who stayed when her mother left. But none of that mattered now. History gets rewritten by the people who stick around long enough to control the narrative. And I had been cut out of the story entirely. Later that night, Olivia found me sitting on the back porch, staring into the dark yard like it held some kind of answer. "What are you thinking?" she asked, sitting beside me. I turned to her slowly. "I think I've been stupid," I said. "I think I spent a decade hoping that if I just stayed patient enough, kind enough, quiet enough, she'd come around. But all I did was teach her that it was okay to treat me like garbage." Olivia didn't try to disagree. That's what I love about her. She never tells me pretty lies just to ease the sting. "So what are you going to do now?" she asked. I looked out into the night, exhaled slowly, and said, "I'm done pretending this is fixable. I think it's time I choose peace, even if it means letting her go." The thing about slow poison is that it doesn't kill you all at once. It just eats away at the parts of you that know how to feel. That's how the last 10 years had felt. A slow, measured breakdown of the father-daughter bond one used to think was unshakable. In the beginning, after the divorce, I still believed I had a place in Erin's heart. She was 17 then, old enough to have opinions, but young enough that I thought I still mattered. I remember our first weekend after the split. I picked her up, took her out for pancakes at that spot she used to love. She barely spoke, eyes on her phone, fingers tapping away, as if every second with me was a sentence she was serving. I told myself she just needed time, that she was processing. But time passed, and the distance stayed. And eventually, silence became the norm. I married Olivia 3 years later. That wasn't something I rushed into. I waited, not because I wasn't sure about her. I was. But because I knew how fragile Erin's tolerance had become. Olivia was gentle, kind, and never once tried to step into a motherly role. She respected the line. But Erin didn't care. She treated Olivia like a rival, like some uninvited guest who had invaded our lives. At first, it was subtle. She wouldn't say hello. She'd roll her eyes when Olivia offered her food or tried to make small talk. But then it got worse. She started skipping dinners altogether. She stopped returning my calls. She even told her mother that Olivia was trying to replace her, which couldn't have been further from the truth. Olivia was always walking on eggshells, even when she had done nothing wrong. And I was stuck between the woman I loved and the daughter I was terrified of losing. For years, I made excuses for Erin. I told Olivia, she'll come around. I believed it, or maybe I just needed to believe it. Every ignored birthday message, every declined holiday invite, I chalked it up to teenage angst that never fully wore off. But it wasn't angst. It was contempt, carefully cultivated and reinforced by her mother. My ex never moved on, not really. Sure, she remarried quickly and smiled wide in public. But behind closed doors, she was bitter. And I think that bitterness trickled into Erin's ears every time they spoke. I imagine the conversations they had when I wasn't around. "He left us. He replaced us. You don't owe him anything." And over time, Erin absorbed that narrative like gospel. I watched her harden in real time, watched her sculpt a version of me in her mind that I didn't even recognize. The most painful part was how deliberate it all seemed. There were moments, tiny flickers, when I thought we were reconnecting. Like the time she called me out of the blue to ask for help with her student loans. I remember being so eager, so desperate to hear from her, that I ignored the transactional nature of it all. I sent her the money without hesitation. And for a brief while, she was warm again. She sent thank you texts. She even invited me out to lunch. Olivia came with me, and for an hour, I thought we were turning a corner. Erin laughed at my jokes, smiled at Olivia politely. But then I saw the way her expression changed when we said goodbye, the way she stiffened as Olivia hugged her. And I knew. It was all conditional. A performance. A courtesy extended only while the money was still fresh in her account. I should have drawn a line then. I should have looked at that lunch for what it was, a performance designed to keep me hopeful, just enough to keep giving. But I didn't. I went home that night telling Olivia that things were improving. I showed her the selfie Aaron posted with me, captioned, "Dad still got it." I was so proud. I didn't see the comments until days later. Her friends chiming in with things like, "You mean your other dad?" and "Glad you survived dinner with Satan's stepmom." Aaron never defended me, never corrected them, and I realized she wasn't proud to be seen with me. I was just a prop in her curated life, someone she dusted off when it was convenient. Year after year, I swallowed it. The holidays she spent exclusively with her mom. The birthdays where I only got a text. The Father's Days she skipped entirely. And Olivia, bless her, never once asked me to pick sides. She let me grieve quietly, let me keep hoping. But the strain started to show. There were nights when I'd sit at the kitchen table with my head in my hands, wondering what I had done to deserve this coldness from someone I once carried on my shoulders. Olivia would rub my back, say, "She's still young. Maybe one day." But we both knew that day was never coming. Because Erin wasn't just being distant, she was being cruel. And no one becomes cruel without influence. I think the final straw before the wedding came a year ago. Erin had graduated with her master's degree, and I'd sent her a gift. Nothing flashy, just a diamond pendant with a small letter attached. I wrote, "No matter what, I'll always be proud of you. Love, Dad." She didn't thank me, didn't even acknowledge it. But a week later, I saw a photo of her wearing the necklace on her Instagram, tagging her mother in the caption, "To the one who never stopped believing in me." I stared at that post for an hour, wondering if I was just some background character in her life story, the one who paid the bills but never got written into the script. Olivia saw it too. She didn't say anything at first, but later that night, as we were brushing our teeth, she looked at me in the mirror and said, "She's never going to see you clearly, Mike. Not while her mother keeps holding the camera." She was right, and I think, deep down, I knew it all along. I had been parenting from a distance, hoping love alone would bridge the gap. But love can't do all the heavy lifting when bitterness is actively being fed on the other side. I tolerated the disrespect because I thought that's what good fathers do. I told myself I was strong for enduring it. But strength without boundaries is just self-destruction. And as much as it pained me to admit it, I had failed. Not as a father, but as a man who had let himself be disrespected for far too long in the name of loyalty. And now, it was too late to change the past. But not too late to change how I responded going forward. People always talk about the moment they hit rock bottom like it's some dramatic collapse, like you suddenly find yourself in the dark, surrounded by echoes of your mistakes, clawing your way toward the light. But for me, it wasn't loud. It wasn't even immediate. It came 2 days after the wedding, while I was scrolling mindlessly through Facebook, trying to distract myself from the ache that had taken permanent residence in my chest. I hadn't planned on looking for anything. I certainly didn't want to see pictures from the wedding I'd been banned from. But there it was. One of Aaron's college friends had posted a video of the reception, captioned, "Such a beautiful tribute from the bride to her real support system." I should have kept scrolling. I should have shut my laptop. But I didn't. I clicked. And the moment that video started playing, I felt my world tighten like a fist around my throat. Aaron stood at the center of a candlelit hall, microphone in hand, champagne flute raised high. Her white dress shimmered under the lights, and her smile was wide, too wide. "Before we continue the celebration," she said, her voice bright and clear, "I want to take a moment to thank the 2 people who have truly never let me down." The camera panned to my ex-wife and her husband, seated side by side, their hands intertwined like something out of a Hallmark card. Aaron continued, "Mom, you have always been my rock. You taught me how to love, how to fight for what I believe in, and how to walk away from people who don't serve my peace. And Jeff," she paused for effect, her eyes watering just enough to be camera-friendly. "You came into our lives and never asked for anything. You just showed up. And you kept showing up. You've been more of a father than I could have ever asked for." The room erupted in applause. My ex dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Jeff leaned over and kissed Aaron on the forehead, and I just sat there, watching it all unfold on a screen like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just went cold, like something vital had shut off inside me. For years, I had wondered if I was exaggerating, if maybe I was just too sensitive or too impatient. But hearing my daughter refer to another man as more of a father after everything I'd endured, after everything I'd given, ripped that final sliver of doubt from my chest and left nothing in its place but silence. She didn't just uninvite me. She replaced me, and she wanted me to know it. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a long time. Olivia found me like that an hour later, the glow from the screen still warming the room with a sickly light. I told her what I saw. She didn't gasp. She didn't rush to comfort me. She just sat beside me and held my hand, her thumb brushing across my knuckles in slow circles. After a while, she said, "That wasn't about honoring him. That was about punishing you." And she was right. Aaron knew I would see it, knew it would circulate. That was her final message. You don't matter anymore. The next morning, I started packing boxes. Olivia watched me, confused at first, until I explained. I had made a decision. Aaron's name flashed on the screen. I didn't answer. She called again. Then she sent a text. "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time, thumb hovering over the keyboard. I almost replied. Almost gave her the opening she was looking for. But then I thought of that toast. Of the applause. Of Jeff kissing her on the forehead like he'd earned the right to my memories. And I realized I didn't owe her a damn thing. Not my time. Not my explanations. And certainly not another chance to hurt me. 2 days later, she showed up at my office. I saw her through the glass wall. Nervous, hair curled like she'd tried to look innocent, as if she knew guilt would be more convincing in a bow. I didn't let her in. I told my assistant to say I was in a meeting. And when she left, I didn't watch her go. That night, she sent a longer message, apologizing, saying things got misunderstood, that she didn't mean to hurt me, that Jeff was just a symbol of her new life, not a replacement. But that's the thing about words. They lose their weight when the actions already told the truth. I sat Olivia down that night, poured us both a glass of wine, and said it out loud for the first time. I'm disowning her. Olivia didn't flinch. She just nodded, her eyes soft but resolute. I support whatever brings you peace, she said. And that was the first time in months I felt like I could breathe. I didn't say it lightly. I didn't mean it as a threat. I meant it in the quiet, absolute way that comes when a heart has finally been pushed past its capacity for forgiveness. I wasn't closing the door out of rage. I was closing it because there was no more room left on the floor where I'd been laying for 10 years, begging for someone to see me. When word got out, when my ex found out what I'd done with the inheritance, she called me in a rage. Accused me of being vindictive, unstable, cruel. Said Aaron was just a kid, and I needed to grow up. I laughed. I actually laughed. Because that's when I realized she still thought she had control. Still thought she could guilt me into submission. But that man she left a decade ago, the man who slept on the couch to make sure his daughter didn't see him cry, he was gone. I told her plainly, you made her choose. And she chose. Now I'm choosing too. Then I hung up. There's something strangely freeing about grief when you stop trying to fix it. Once I stopped telling myself I needed to repair things with Aaron, the heaviness shifted. It didn't vanish, not entirely. Some weights just become part of you. But it settled into a place where I could carry it without falling apart. That Monday morning, after the last message Aaron sent begging to talk, just one more time, I walked into my lawyer's office and finalized everything. My will was updated. The revocable trust I'd once named after her was dissolved. The funds were rerouted, clean and traceable, directly into a donation for 3 local orphanages. I even visited one of them afterward, just to be sure the money wouldn't be wasted. A woman there hugged me when I explained what I'd done. She said, "Your pain must have been something fierce to do something this kind." And I smiled, not because she was right, but because it was the first time someone saw the pain without trying to invalidate it. I didn't keep it a secret, not out of spite, but because I was done pretending. I sent an email to my siblings, those who still spoke to me, and let them know. It was simple, firm, and free of theatrics. As of today, Aaron is no longer my legal heir. I wish her peace and a full life, but I will no longer be a part of it. I've redirected all my estate plans to children who have no one. Please respect my decision. Some replied with short nods of understanding. Others sent back question marks or half-hearted attempts at diplomacy. My younger brother, Tom, called me that evening. "Mike, are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice hesitant, like he was afraid of stepping on a landmine. "I've never been more sure of anything," I replied. "It's not about revenge. It's about not pouring into a cup that's already been smashed." Tom was one of the few people who knew how deep the damage had gone. He had seen the way Erin treated Olivia at family gatherings, how she'd sit 3 seats away and pretend my wife didn't exist. He was there when I paid Erin's car off, and she didn't even say thank you, just posted online about how some blessings come when you least expect them. He had seen my eyes after holidays spent alone, after birthdays ignored, after phone calls that went unanswered. "Still," he said, "she's your daughter, Mike. That bond means something." And I understood what he meant. But that bond had become a chain, and chains, no matter how sentimental, still keep you shackled. Later that week, Erin showed up at our house. I saw her through the window, same cautious stance, same wounded expression like she was the one who had been left behind. I didn't open the door. I watched her knock once, twice, then press her palm against the wood like she could will me to change my mind. Olivia came to the hallway, saw me standing there, and said, "Do you want me to talk to her?" I shook my head. "There's nothing left to say," I said quietly. And I meant it. Every conversation I could have had with her had already played out in my head 100 times. All the apologies I'd longed for. All the tears I imagined. None of it would make up for the toast, for the betrayal, for 10 years of calculated coldness. You can't keep begging someone to love you while they weaponize your hope. Still, I knew people would talk. I wasn't naive. Disowning your only child isn't exactly something that goes unnoticed. And true to form, the rumors came quickly. One of Erin's friends posted on Facebook that she couldn't believe a father would choose money and ego over blood. My ex went on her own miniature smear campaign, telling anyone who'd listened that I had always been emotionally abusive and that Erin had just finally stood up for herself. I didn't respond. I didn't post rebuttals or write long essays defending my side. I didn't need to. The truth doesn't beg for airtime. It just sits quietly and lets the noise burn itself out. And Olivia, God, she was a rock. Every time someone tried to bait us, she'd just say, "He chose peace." That's all you need to know. But not everyone turned their back. One of the biggest surprises came from my niece, Kayla, Tom's daughter. She was only 24, just a few years younger than Erin, and we hadn't spoken deeply in years. But she showed up one Saturday with a pie she had baked herself and said, "Uncle Mike, I just wanted you to know I see what you did." And I think it was brave. I damn near cried. We sat on the back porch eating pie straight from the tin, and she told me stories about how even as a kid, she noticed how Erin would look through people she didn't find useful. "She always treated love like it was a transaction," Kayla said. "You were just the only one who kept paying." That hit me harder than I expected, because it was true. And yet, even with the decision made, even with the papers signed and the accounts drained into better hands, I still felt haunted by the ghost of what should have been. There were nights I'd wake up thinking about Erin as a little girl, barefoot in the backyard, chasing fireflies, calling out, "Daddy, look." And I'd wonder where that child had gone. What version of me failed to protect her from becoming this stranger? But then I'd remember something Olivia once said. You can love someone and still walk away from them, especially if staying means setting yourself on fire just to keep them warm. And that became my mantra. I had loved Erin, fiercely, unconditionally. But I couldn't keep sacrificing myself at the altar of fatherhood while she worshipped someone else. The final moment of clarity came during a routine visit to the orphanage. One of the boys, maybe 10 years old, ran up to me with a drawing he'd made. It was a messy crayon sketch of a man and a woman holding hands, standing beside a house with a crooked roof. "This is you and your wife," he said proudly. "I don't have a dad, but if I did, I'd want him to look like you." I couldn't speak. I just nodded, swallowed hard, and knelt to hug him. That's when I knew I hadn't lost a daughter. I'd found something else, something honest. A purpose that didn't come with manipulation or guilt. And I wouldn't trade that peace for anything in the world. The thing about peace is that it doesn't come with fireworks. It doesn't arrive like some grand declaration or triumphant parade. It just slips into your life, quiet, and unassuming. And one day you realize you've stopped bracing for the next wound. That's how I felt in the months after I cut ties with Erin. There was no final showdown, no slamming of doors or screaming match to wrap it all in drama. Just silence. A stillness that once would have terrified me, but now felt like breath returning to a body that had been suffocating for years. People kept waiting for me to regret it, for the guilt to kick in like some delayed reaction, but all I felt was clarity. Not joy, not vindication, just the soft, unshakable truth that I had done what needed to be done. I started spending more time at the orphanages where I had donated Erin's inheritance. Not because I was trying to fill a void, but because I wanted to invest in something that returned light instead of draining it. There was a boy named Malik, 11 years old, who had the same stubborn fire in his eyes that Erin once had. He'd challenge me to games of chess and try to distract me with questions mid-match just to throw me off. If you could go back and undo one thing in your life, what would it be? He asked me one Saturday. I stared at the board, at the rook I had just sacrificed to protect my king, and smiled. I'd undo staying quiet for so long, I said. I'd speak up the first time I felt small. He didn't fully understand the weight of my answer, but he nodded like he did, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was being heard, even if it was by someone with crayons in his pocket and chocolate on his chin. Olivia and I grew closer than ever during that time, not because of what we went through, but because of how we came out of it. She never said, "I told you so." Never made it about her, though she had every right to. She'd spent 10 years being treated like a ghost by someone who didn't even try to see her. But instead of carrying that bitterness, she poured her energy into loving me better, showing up in small, quiet ways. Making dinner even on her long days. Leaving notes in my wallet. Taking my hand every time I started to drift into doubt. "You did what fathers are supposed to do," she told me one night as we watched the sunset from our porch. "You showed up. Again and again. But now, you're showing up for yourself. And that matters, too." Of course, the fallout didn't go away. I made a mistake for 10 years. This is the correction. There was a moment, a single, strange moment, that almost cracked me. I found an old home video while cleaning out the garage. It was from when Erin was 8. She was sitting on my shoulders at the county fair, squealing about a balloon animal and yelling, "Daddy, go faster." The camera panned to my face, and I looked so alive, so proud. That kind of open-faced joy you don't even realize you're showing. I watched that clip 3 times. Part of me wished I could talk to that man, to warn him. Tell him not to give so much to people who will rewrite history when it's convenient. But I also didn't want to rob him of that moment. Because it was real. Whatever came later, the love I gave back then was honest. And that version of Erin, the child, before the poison took root, was real, too. I just had to learn to love the memory without needing the person attached to it. As the seasons changed and the story of my absence from Erin's life grew old to the gossipers, I began building something new. Olivia and I started a scholarship fund in memory of my mother, who raised me with more grace than I ever appreciated as a child. We called it the Quiet Foundation, because sometimes the loudest love is the kind that doesn't announce itself. The kind that just shows up, year after year, even when no one claps. And through that, I found a different kind of legacy. Not tied to bloodlines or last names, but to impact. To choosing love where love is welcomed, not tolerated. I think the hardest part wasn't the betrayal. It was the realization that I kept setting myself on fire, hoping the heat would thaw someone else's heart. And when it didn't, I thought it meant I wasn't burning hot enough, that I wasn't trying hard enough. But some hearts aren't frozen, they're just closed. And no amount of warmth can open what someone else has chosen to keep locked. I let that truth wash over me, not with anger, but with acceptance. Because once I stopped begging to be chosen, I started choosing myself. And that's a kind of healing no one can take away. Now, when people ask if I have children, I pause. I say, I did once. And when they ask if I miss her, I say, I miss the version of her who knew how to love me. But I don't miss chasing after someone who didn't. It's not cruelty. It's clarity. Because love without respect isn't love, it's bondage. And I refuse to wear chains just because they were handed to me in a hospital room 2 decades ago. I end each day now with gratitude. Not because I have everything figured out, but because I finally know what I won't tolerate. I know what peace costs, and I know that no matter how loud the world shouts about blood and forgiveness, I am allowed to say no. I am allowed to walk away. I am allowed to live without guilt. And I do. Finally, if you've ever had to make the impossible choice between family and your own peace, you know it's never simple, and it never stops hurting. But sometimes, choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. If this story hit home, if you've walked away from someone you once would have done anything for, I want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your story matters. And if you believe more people need to hear stories like this, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps keep these raw, real conversations alive. See you soon in the next story.